a third of the project are actually failing due to a poor misconception of CMC.
Welcome to the PharmaSource podcast.
Before we dive into today's conversation, let's bring you up to speed on significant developments that emerged this past week in the United States. First, Pfizer joined President Trump in the Oval Office to sign the first pharmaceutical pricing agreement under the Trump administration's Most Favored Nation executive order, committing to offer select medications at prices matching or below those in other developed nations. Pfizer will be joining Trump RX, a newly launched federal drug purchasing website which was announced at the same time. Second, and perhaps more disruptive, is the implementation of Trump's 100% tariff on pharmaceutical imports, also effective October 1st. This sweeping trade policy applies to branded medications manufactured outside the United States and is already creating significant ripples across the supply chain, with most in Big Pharma pledging huge levels of investment to avoid being hit by tariffs. Pfizer's newly announced $70 billion in US R&D and manufacturing brings the total to around $420 billion in commitments to reshore manufacturing in the United States to date. Last but not least, we're pleased to announce the launch of CDMO Live Americas, taking place in Boston on the 19th to 21st of October in 2026. With so much change happening in US manufacturing, we feel this is the perfect time to bring the biopharma outsourcing community together. We will be sharing more announcements on this in the weeks to come, but for now you can head to cdmolive.com for information about both CDMO Live Europe and CDMO Live Americas. Now, back to today's episode with Carole Delauney. The sterile injectables market is experiencing unprecedented growth, expanding from $14.4 billion in 2024 to a projected $33.7 billion by 2035. This surge is being driven by breakthrough therapies like GLP-1 receptor agonists for diabetes and obesity, an expanding biologics pipeline, and the reality that over 40% of new drug approvals now require sterile injectable formulations. As demand soars, specialised expertise comes at a premium, and manufacturing capacity has become one of the industry's most valuable commodities. Today, we're joined by Carole Delauney, who brings nearly 2 decades of deep technical expertise in sterile injectable manufacturing. Thank you for joining us, Carole.
Thank you, Dora, for the invitation.
So let's jump right in then, Carole, and talk about what is it about sterile injectables that captured your attention and kept you drawn into it as your career?
Yes, thank you, Dora, for this question. So a little bit about myself. I started in the contract manufacturing industry back in early 2000. And I moved to sterile fill finish in 2008 and never changed industry fields since then. So I am in sales, business development, so to speak, but I really foresee myself as being a solution provider. There's really no two similar projects. They involve multiple technologies which are very intimately connected to each other, from filling lines to primary packaging to medical devices. And the field itself is in constant evolution. So there's, of course, a need to ensure that healthcare providers, safe when they deliver a product that is actually easy to deliver. There's also the need to make sure that patients are at a certain comfort in the treatment. Yes, we have to speak about that. In the end, patients will have to adhere to treatment. If I take an example, insulin administration, back in 1985, when the first pen injector was launched by Novo Nordisk, the needle was 16 millimeter long, while now it's 4 millimeter long. And the patients can also use micropumps, which didn't exist back in that time. And those micropumps deliver insulin. They don't even think about it. It's sometimes even linked to a glucose dosing medical device. So it's a field that is in constant evolution. And I have to be honest, I'm very thrilled to be part of this industry sector.
So what I find fascinating is how deeply technical sterile injectable manufacturing really is. It's not just about filling vials, there's incredible complexity behind it. So how has being so technically grounded yourself shaped the way you approach business relationships? Do you find that technical depth helps you cut through the noise when evaluating opportunities or make you see problems that other people might miss?
Very good question, Dora. Again, I fully agree with you. And this is what I've been saying since many, many years. This is not just fill finish. It's unfortunately not commonly recognized in the industry, but this is a very important topic that we are raising here. I can give you a very simple example. If you fill water into a small glass vial, even if it is in a 2 ml vial, which is a very small glass vial, if you fill less than 1 ml water, so for injection water, this product is actually not simple to develop. Why that? Because the contact between the solution and the glass vial is disproportionate. So you might say, well, it's just liquid water in a vial, so it will be stable. No, actually, the vials, they are not made 100% of silica. They can potentially leach. And so there's the question, if a company comes to me and say, okay, you just fill water in a vial, you choose the vial, you choose the stopper, and all will be fine, without any pre-stability data, without any study on the actual choice of the vial, then there's a problem. It means that potentially the Lyo product will be more stable. So 2 for 3 years stability will be possible with the Lyo products, as opposed to the solvent, which will be unstable after 2 years life. So this is not a simple topic. And also, when you're selecting a partner, I would say evil is in the detail. For instance, so you have to evaluate technical criteria. And so this is why there's kind of a relationship that is built together with the companies, because you need to make sure that their request is aligned with your capabilities as a CMO. So for instance, let's start with, is my facility designed to handle a certain drug substance, a certain potency? So that's the very simple question, first question to ask yourself. But another question, for instance, if the drug substance is a biological sensitive to oxidation, and you look to fill a prefilled syringe, the idea would be to place the stopper as close to the formulation, to the solution, so then there's minimized contact with oxygen. And this is also potentially a need when drug substances are sensitive to oxidation, to actually look for a filling line that can flush nitrogen at the point of filling. There's not that many different filling lines which are capable of doing so. Another question to ask yourself, is the line loss acceptable for the drug product and drug substance that I'm handling? If the drug substance is super costly, then it wouldn't make any sense to go to a filling line with, I don't know, 3-4 liter line loss. So you might say there's not that many of these kind of lines anymore, but it does exist. Also, is the client's timeline allocated for the drug product manufacturing aligned with the way I actually handle and transfer a product? Has the client a certain understanding of the steps required before a GMP manufacturing? You cannot cut corners all the time. Also, has the client evaluated the sourcing of primary packaging? This can be actually quite a big question when it comes to this kind of project. So, as I said earlier, I really try to wear the hat of a solution provider and build a relationship together with my client, because we have to ask ourselves the good question: can we, how, within which time frame is my solution viable in the end for the project itself? I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot. And so let's talk more about what you're seeing in the market then. So when biotech companies approach CDMOs for sterile injectable manufacturing, what are the most common misconceptions or gaps you encounter? And are there key things that's different in sterile injectables that you have to look for in a CDMO that you might not have to consider with other modalities?
Well, there's a common sense into drug substance and drug product development for any commodities. It's a long way road. So you're developing a drug substance from discovery up to GMP grade. It takes time. It costs a lot of money. But then When moving to the next phase, which is clinical manufacturing or contract manufacturing, this is a different environment. And time is again a matter of money. So for early stage biotech company moving to proof of concept, phase 1, first human trial, there's need to secure data as soon as possible to raise potentially additional money. There's other options like this, like biosimilar development, where speed is important because the first to market will actually gain a certain size of the market. However, in this approach, fill finish is not foreseen as a major step, but more like a commodity, for instance, that should be kind of quick, potentially affordable, and even repeatable with similar entities. So when a prospect comes to CMO, some not aware that actually they put a very high constraint on the CMOs to be able to deliver what they expect within the time frame that they actually allocated into their full drug project program. So some CDMOs have developed a platform approach with the same, packaging, sterile filter, batch size, etc. But this cannot be reproducible for any type of administration or product profile. So there are some limits to this aspect. So it's kind of, sometimes I feel that there's two worlds trying to live and cohabit together, and the drug substance development versus sterile fill finish. And when it comes to sterile fill finish, it's also very important to realize that in the end, this is the CMO who will release the drug product for clinical tests. So as I mentioned earlier, we cannot cut corners. And there's a very interesting example to the approach of the Swissmedic towards this kind of situation. They do not accept, for instance, release a batch under quarantine for the simple reason that they do not want to accept such a situation versus what they call poor project management. It's very interesting example, I would say.
Great, thanks a lot for that. And so with your experience in sterile injectables, you've probably seen biotech companies at all stages of their manufacturing journey. What's it like when you first sit down with a company that's moving from lab to commercial production? What are they usually most worried about, and what should they actually be worried about?
So yeah, there's different steps in the development. So moving indeed from lab to first proof of concept in human, as opposed to a more major development in phase 2, moving to phase 3 commercial manufacturing. So there's somehow, as I already mentioned, the fact that the industry is not educated to the fill finish complexity, and also it actually is not foreseen as an added value. And within CMC, you have a very large part covered by manufacturing. Time is money. There's not enough focus placed on the development of a robust solution, for instance. And this can lead to potentially repeat studies, even preclinical studies, if a formulation has to be optimized later in the process. So, and it's quite complex for service providers at that stage to say somehow no, because we foresee problems sometimes far in advance. But we are forced also to some solutions that are not always acceptable, and for which we have the need actually to advise and to educate our clients to the solution that would be acceptable. And this is something that is quite interesting, is that the industry is starting to recognize the fact that CMC is a very large part of a development. And I've attended a panel last year at BioEurope, which was focusing on CMC and the fact that it has a very important impact on projects. It is apparently recognized that a third of the projects are actually failing due to a poor misconception of CMC. And investors are more and more aware of this challenge. So when I attend Europe, for instance, I tend to explain to my prospects or the people I interact with that as much as they understand what will be the next steps for them to move into manufacturing, what could be, the potential partners, they then would be able to defend their projects in front of investors with tangible data. So then they have a drug substance, which is going to be moved to phase 1, phase 2, etc. And they also have a plan for, okay, what could be my partners in the future? How do I foresee the next step in my development? It could bring a certain added value, actually, for biotech companies, because they don't sell just a drug substance to an indication. They sell a complete package. And I've also heard about a large pharma evaluating a project which was for out licensing in phase 3. And after performing a due diligence of the package, they realized that the project was not developed to the stage that they would have evaluated it as a phase 3. They actually came back to the biotech company and rejected the project unless the biotech company would accept that their asset was in phase 2. If you out-license a project in phase 2, the value of the project is less lower. And the biotech company, actually, hearing that feedback, refused the package for phase 2, mentioning, okay, no, I have in front of me phase 3, I've developed it to this stage, and this project is has failed in the end. It never found a home because it was a true requirement to move it back to certain steps in phase 2. So CMC, if you don't plan for proper CMC, you could actually put your assets into great difficulty in the future.
So do you see any way around this then? How would it be best to kind of educate early biotechs on making sure they avoid mistakes down the line by kind of bringing in CMC early on? How do you see we can kind of fix this problem?
It's an interesting question. Because I mentioned the fact that in my industry, we have a lot of different actors and service providers, so to speak, which are very intimately connected. And this is a question we ask ourselves. So like primary packaging providers, for instance, there's a huge portion of the industry who do not understand why they should put so much time on selecting a glass vial. Because a glass vial is just a vial made of glass, which is actually untrue. If you look at shot options, they have decision 3, actually, in order to select the proper vial, depending on the pH of the formulation, depending on drug substance category, and so on. So they have several different options. So it means that if the biotech company or the pharma company, to some extent, is not aware of all these different choices and options, then there will be already a problem here. So as an industry-wide, it's been recognized that there's a lack of education. And what's happening as of today is that the medical device manufacturer or the primary packaging manufacturer, the sterile filter manufacturer, the CMO, they tend to try to educate straight towards their standards. And I think it will take time to get to a stage where we are really sure that there's a common and standard understanding. Over the years, people have failed. And so now they are conscious that they shouldn't repeat mistakes. So, yeah, we are learning by failure. But I wish it would go a bit faster, to be honest.
Yeah. Interesting. Let's talk about supply chain security now, because that seems to be kind of a challenge in this space. What's your take on how you see companies approach this? Are there blind spots that surprise you?
Okay. So when it comes to supply chain security, I see 2 aspects in it. So the first aspect is a company topic. So when you have a product in development, 2 CMOs will be unlikely qualified before market launch, because you, as a biotech company, you have to focus on the time to market, concentrate your effort and money, of course, and test also the market uptake, because the forecasts have a certain uncertainty. So that's for sure. Two suppliers won't be qualified at that stage. But for strategic drug products, supply chain security will be a must. For instance, if you look at an example like Moderna Spikevax, you can see that Moderna qualified several partners, from drug substance to drug product, secondary packaging. It's very interesting to witness such a situation. However, I can provide you a recent example. I talked to the vice president corporate development of a major biotech company after, seeing all the stages of the company and how mature the pipeline was. I came to this person and my curiosity asked if supply chain security was a topic. And I was very surprised to understand that the company had only one drug substance manufacturer and, if I remember correctly, 2 drug product manufacturers. And supply chain security was definitely recognized as a threat. So there's many reasons why a company is in this kind of situation. It could be that a project is launched and doesn't perform as well as expected. So the supply chain security is a topic that is pushed by a year or 2 years, but it means that this situation exists. So that's one aspect of it. It's the company response to supply chain security. The second aspect is actually a more wild industry topic or even government topic. When you look at COVID crisis, we all experienced very high risk on starting material or equipment lead time. It was a real bottleneck for many, many other players in the industry who were not actually focusing on COVID manufacturing. And supply chain security became also a government priority and topic to avoid the out-of-stock situation on vital products like antibiotics, but also painkiller, anesthetic. And if you look at the example of France government, they've selected 25 projects that are on a priority list. But now they are claiming that those projects should be manufactured closer to the market. However, it's been years that drug substance manufacturing has been moved to lower cost countries. And if you want to bring back drug products, you have also to bring back drug substance. And if you bring back drug substance, it means that you need to expand chemical plants or even open chemical plants. So that's one thing. And the drug products which have been moved to other low price markets have most of the time the problem that they are low margin projects. They have very old registration files. So when you select a new manufacturing chain, you have to reopen those files and potentially to completely rebuild your registration files, which could lead to some additional costs. These projects, they are not attractive for the pharma industry, and I'm not certain that governments who are looking to outsource those projects closer to the market put any pressure on the pharma industry because they don't have any solution at the moment to do so.
So what's your take then on the European CDMO market for sterile injectables and how it's structured? From your perspective, are there specific challenges that make navigating that market particularly challenging for companies trying to find the right manufacturing partner?
Well, first of all, I think it's two fragmented markets. Historically, it has been developed as a fragmented market. There's CDMO mapping data was published by Fuligenius, which show that in Europe, there are 330 CDMOs owning maybe 550, 570 facilities, and so that's for commercial manufacturing, small molecule, and globally, there are 670 manufacturing sites. So you can see that in Europe, we have a very, very fragmented market. And there's another thing which I find extremely confusing is the fact that some global players, they grow by acquisition, but not only on drug products, they have different industry segments. Captains is a good example. You've got from drug substance micronization up to clinical, adding biological manufacturing. I mean, it's very, very, very large offer. There are also some major players who have a very specialized focus, like analytical services, and then suddenly they decide to grow into the CDMO industry. But it's not a field that they actually understand yet, and they try because they know that it is quite interesting field to expand. But it's a confusing setup and a fragmented setup. And the other thing that partners have to be aware of is that when they have a need, they cannot go out and select a partner. It is a process that should start at least 12 or 18 months in advance. It's important to pre-evaluate potential options to secure a fast action when the need is secure. And the small biotech companies, they don't have the time to prepare. Most of the time, they tend to go to the most well-known suppliers, but I'm not certain that their business strategy is always fitting, small biotech strategies. So there's a quite a big question mark here when it comes to partner selection. If a biotech company becomes just a number, as amongst other numbers, then there might be certain difficulty in the end to get the attention of the CMO, which is not really putting enough effort on those early stage developments.
I see. So is there any kind of way around that with looking for a partner that's around a similar kind of size as you are, being approached to make sure that you are a priority for them?
There's two aspects for that. I think it's not only a question of size, it's a question of how the CDMO is organized. You do not handle early stage development as you handle commercial developments if you're a large CDMO. So those should not be exactly the same groups handling those type of projects, first of all. And if a small company is looking into a partner of its size, they also have to make sure that this partner is financially stable enough, that they have been funded by investors who know what CDMO means also, because you can have investors who are very impatient for return on investment, and they may end up being in very nasty discussion down the lines. So there's not like one single answer to that. And I think it also very much depend on what kind of service as a company you're looking for as well.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. And so pricing and differentiation seem to be other ongoing challenges for CDMOs. When every company claims to offer the same capabilities, how do you advise clients to evaluate real differentiation? What should they actually be looking for?
I think this is a vast question. CDMO selection is definitely a long way road. So there's multiple criteria to be assessed. And there will be, I would say, a difference between either the project you're looking at is in early stage versus late stage. However, there will be a certain common focuses. So for instance, timing and project planning. You have to evaluate the CDMO expertise approach, whether it is a proof of concept in human, and the company has to show speed, flexibility, agility towards the way it engages such processes, versus a late stage development program where the phase 3 is moving to commercial stage before starting initial process, validation batch manufacturing, and then registration batch manufacturing. So you have to look overall how a company is going to approach such projects. Then there's also the experience in quality security of the drug product from development as early of the choice of the primary packaging combination and product stability over years, up to a due diligence of and quality audit of facility maintenance and operation system evaluation. So this is a very vast topic. Also, I think there's a topic that is maybe not commonly recognized, but I feel that, not that I feel, but by experience, there's the need to make sure that there's the strong cultural fit between partners. And also, where is actually laying the expertise? So am I meeting, each time I meet with a supplier, am I meeting with a C-level? Or am I actually going to meet the people I'm going to work with? What's also my company cultural mindset versus the partner I'm evaluating? There's huge difference between one country to the other. If you look in the US, from New Jersey to California, people don't deal together the same way. And also, am I going common number, as I mentioned earlier, or will I have a single point of contact, which will enable my project internally? Pricing will be always key, but in sterile fill finish, actually, pricing is not always the main reason for CMO selection. There's the need also to make sure that you're comparing apple to apple when you're doing enough partners, because it's actually something that takes a very long time. It's difficult exercise, and you might struggle a lot when comparing one quotation to another. And there's definitely the need to make sure that the price is not going to double after project signature. There's the need to properly select and build correct assumptions during project evaluation. So that's a very important point. So those are the criteria I would put a lot of emphasis on: project planning, quality, security of products, with cultural fit experience, the one-stop shop aspect, and the pricing versus assumptions building.
Great, interesting. Thanks for that. And so where do you see the sterile injectables industry heading over the next few years then? Are there technology shifts, regulatory changes, or market forces that are going to reshape how this industry operates?
So the way I foresee the evolution of the industry today is first of all, we are building on what we've learned over the last years, facing a COVID crisis. And now we have some key players like Novo Nordisk or Lilly who are really reshuffling everything because they're looking for very, very high capacity, while some companies feel bankruptcy after the COVID crisis because they built capacity which were unused. So we have really to make sure, as industry players, to make sure that we partner hand in hand, specifically for injectables, because those facilities, they require high maintenance. And pharma industry, players cannot expect that CDMOs would come with capacity and unutilized facility just waiting for their need. There's really the requirement to build partnerships along this line and to look ahead and not to ask for a certain capacity at a certain point of time without actually building partnership with suppliers prior to this demand. That's, I think, one of the major aspects, keeping in mind that the uncertainty is going to be potentially still existent over the next years when you see how the US market is taking, different decisions towards development programs which have been built by previous governments. So partners is going to be even more important. And one thing that I've also witnessed is the fact that we are focusing more and more on projects like cancer, like obesity treatment, diabetes. But there are what I would call the rare bird in French. It's moutons à cinq pattes. In fact, those projects which are vital, like antibiotics, anesthetics, painkillers. There's with low margin, there are certain unattractiveness for pharma players, but they are vital products. So there's, in my opinion, the need to really rethink, together with the regulatory authorities, how we are going to handle those products in the future.